that supports projects. It has been founded in 1951. Uh, our mission is to foster science, technology, and innovation, and so we support the sustainable development in Brazil. It's a great pleasure to be here, uh, and my congratulations for Embrapa and IICA for having this workshop, and we hope we hope everything will be fine. We have okay, we have a very interesting program, and we start with Dr. Manuel Otero as the keynote speaker. Manuel Manuel Otero is the general director of IICA. He is graduated in veterinary by the pela Universidade de Buenos Aires. It's master in science in agricultural development by the University of London, and also worked on the animal production by the by a master also for Katia, Cat, pela in Costa Rica, Costa Rica. Yeah. He was a counsel in Washington in the agricultural secretary of Argentina, and also member of the agricultural secretary of Argentina, secretaries, and vice president of the INTA in Argentina. Yeah, he's now doing a very good work in Brazil. I We are very glad to have him with us in Brazil. Okay, his his talk today will be about the 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 importance of uh, the, the for the tropical agriculture in Americas. Okay, it's almost based on, and it's a very important talk of his because of the his vision about tropical agriculture in Brazil, and also the legacy of Alison Paulinelli, who is now candidate for the Peace Prize Nobel. Uh, He's we are very um, it's very important for us in Brazil that Paulinelli has this success in this candidature, and and this workshop is will highlight will his work and the importance of his legacy in Brazil. Thank you very much. And now having thought talk about this importance by Dr. Otero, please.
Muchas gracias. Buen día a todos y a todas. Doctor Evaldo, es un honor que usted sea el moderador en esta segunda sesión de la Semana Internacional de la Agricultura Tropical de las Américas, que comenzó ayer realmente muy bien, con el merecido tributo al doctor Alison Paulinelli. Es también un honor formar parte de esta sesión donde hay tan importantes autoridades de AGRA, de la Universidad de Kenia, de CIRAT, del CIAT y del CATIE. En el tiempo asignado yo quisiera hacer dos cosas. Una, tratar de dimensionar la importancia de la agricultura tropical de las Américas, sobre todo en términos de sus desafíos, de sus oportunidades, y también ubicarla en el contexto de la cumbre que está convocando Naciones Unidas sobre sistemas alimentarios y que se va a realizar a fines de septiembre. Faltan solo 6 meses y estoy seguro, espero, que el tema de la agricultura tropical, su papel central en la provisión de alimentos de calidad, con un enfoque de desarrollo sostenible, va a ser uno de los temas centrales. Si puedo pasar a la primera, por favor. Cuando hablamos de los países que conforman la América tropical, me estoy refiriendo a los países con clima tropical, subtropical, que están entre los trópicos de Cáncer y Capricornio. Ellos son unos 30 países que representan el 85% del Producto Interno Bruto de nuestro continente, y ahí hay aproximadamente 564 millones de personas. Lo más importante es que esos países tropicales tienen en la agricultura un sector clave, un pasado, un presente y sobre todo un futuro que hay que construir haciendo los cambios necesarios para el nuevo contexto
to this new context so that they continue to be fundamental important providers of abundant and nutritious food, respecting at the same time the environment. According to statistics, this agricultural sector in tropical countries accounts for 5% of the GDP. And I'm sure that we were to consider all of the chains, and they would see that a wider vision of agriculture would see that it accounts for far more, almost 20% of employment. And we look at the rural areas, it is even more than 50%. 10% of exports comes from this tropical belt and comes from Brazil, which is a major player, as was said yesterday. Minister Teresa Cristina talked about an important player in agriculture. And of course, these tropical countries are leaders in banana, for example, Ecuador and Costa Rica, coffee for various countries in this region, for Colombia, of course, Brazil, Central American countries, pineapples, in In Costa Rica, meat products, as is the case of Brazil, as well as citrus products, and also in Brazil, just to name a few examples. The most important thing is that when we talk about agriculture in these countries on the tropical belt, for example, we see that 6 of the 17 most megadiverse countries in the world, which account for a very rich diversity, we see that they're in this tent. In the other areas, we 3 centers of origin, we 3 are in tropical America, and we have with rich abundance of lands as well as water. Yesterday we talked about this. When also with regards to soil resources, land resources, we of course have to ensure that these have to be cared for, and in agriculture, and as I'm going to state a little further down in my speak, we're talking about intensification of agriculture. Next slide. Now, these tropical countries have a series of challenges on this short term and medium term, and especially in the long term. Of course, we're exposed to extreme events, which are more and more frequent and intense. We have in the tropical America, we have quite a number of countries that are among the most vulnerable in the world. Just as an example, I'm talking about Honduras in these dry corridors of Central America, which is perhaps these are the most vulnerable countries. I would also like to mention Haiti, which is another vulnerable country, countries in the Eastern Caribbean that are frequently exposed to natural disasters. So these extreme events change the map of pests and diseases, and the banana disease in the poor bananas. I just like to say that ICA with others is setting up a partnership, a world partnership to deal with these questions, HLB in citrus fruits, and the coffee mildew disease, which we have in Central America. This is a very dynamic map, and for this reason, many of these health institutes have to ensure that they monitor this situation very closely. We do have some problems with output within tropical Americas, where I'm going to show you a little later. And of course, when we compare ourselves with temperate countries that have the benefit from the spillover from the developed countries, we see that there are very clear differences with respect to total production. Another question is that of trade logistics, trade facilitation, infrastructure drawbacks, which show that all of the comparative advantage that we have up to the very doors of the production establishment they come up against problems with transport and customs, not only in the border countries that do not, the questions of forms, but also when we have to export our fresh products, this comparative advantage is lost. So we do have a serious problem with citrus problem, for example, which is very clear in countries in the dry corridor. And this problem affects the south and southeastern part of Mexico in some cases. In the northeast of Brazil, we have this problem. And we also have the problem of soil degradation, where 50% of the Mesoamerican soils show great degree of degradation. For this reason, together with the World Food Agricultural Prize, we're setting up an ambitious plan to ensure that we improve the soils. Dr. Alison Paulinella, who we honored yesterday, was also won the World Agricultural Food Prize, and he's also a candidate for the World for the Peace Prize. So what we're trying to get is agriculture which is smart, which is intensive, and in knowledge intensive, and it also has to be socially responsible, where apart from being climatically intelligent, it must also be nutritionally intelligent, nutritionally smart. It's a problem of quality of food. And this, we have to make sure that this message is strongly brought over to the ministers of agriculture and environment, because of course we have to monitor the development of markets. For a long time, we thought that the European markets were the most important ones, the markets of USA and China. Of course, markets in Africa are also important. We have to continue to monitor markets to ensure that this agriculture, this smart agriculture, is really a reality. And this brings us closer to the concept of food systems, where we can analyze the social, territorial, value chains dimensions, and to ensure that we have production keeping in line with consumership. We also have to have an intelligent value chain, a smart value chain. As I said before, one of the major problems that we encounter in our tropical agriculture, and I'd even say in the agriculture throughout our continent, is the gaps in terms of productivity. In general terms, if we analyze, have a comparative analysis between the countries of our continent, we need not compare ourselves with developed countries, but we see that the different in what 10 to 1 in all chains, not only coffee, sugar, rice or maize, but we see that no one should be left behind. No one should be left outside. So we have to make a major effort. Brazil, with its know-how and its innovation, can do a lot to help us to build new partnerships, institutional partnerships, so that we can increase yields and productivity of the countries that are lagging behind. Another problem that we have is quantity of waste within all of the chains, all of the links of the chains. Of course, waste means that we have to more greenhouse gases. And what we have to do, therefore, is to use this residual biomass and use new bioproducts that are increasingly important in markets. I'm going to tell you a little later on. And this is what we have to do for the new agenda of research, agricultural research, because we are faced with a really good opportunity here. As an example, for each ton of maize that we produce, there is 1 ton of maize that remains on the ground. Of course, there are some countries such as Brazil and Argentina, through biofuels and other products and subproducts, are using these opportunities and making use of this waste. So we have to decarbonize the environment, we have to recarbonize the soils, and we have to be more aggressive in the use of biomaterials. I'd like to reiterate the whole concept is that we have to follow science and technology, and to this effect, the tropical agricultural model in Brazil, which we have Embrapa, CNP, and other national systems that include the universities. This should help us to be optimistic in transforming and putting tropical agriculture right at the forefront, because this is what the world needs. This is not a problem of not only productivity, which is necessary, but also we have to work in the post-harvesting area. We have to work in the processing stage. We also have to look carefully at the demands of the consumers, because these are the ones that really get going the chains in tropical as well as temperate America. I'd like to state once more that we have to position the whole question of research and development. And to this end, we have to follow the example given by Brazil and other countries such as Uruguay, and to a lesser extent, my own country, Argentina, Chile, that know that the real means of achieving smart agriculture is through national systems that are strong, that science and technology, which in the case of Brazil, they have Embrapa, universities, CNP, and other entities. In America in general, there are three countries that concentrate most of investment. I'm talking about Brazil, Argentina, and Mexico. And here you will see that whereas developed countries develop more than a little less than $3 for every $100 of agricultural production, the average for our continent, according to a recent study that was led by Rubens Echeverria, is $1. But there are countries that are way below this, way below this level, this reference level, and sometimes they go to sometimes 1.4. And of course, we cannot allow the luxury of having this situation if we want to take over against the high productivity levels that we want. And if we want to have input in the question of biomaterials and the new research that our countries wish to have. We not only have to think about national research systems, but we also have to think about regional systems. And here, ICA can help. We have to talk about Processur. There's also ICA can give great support to the countries. We have been working with Fontagro and CATI and with other institutions. We have to build these bridges with African countries. And for this reason, it is so important to be able to listen to the experts from AGRA and universities such as University of Kenya. I just like to stress the whole question of bioeconomy because ICA is working very hard on this and show that the growth rates of bioproducts as opposed to primary agricultural products is very large. The growth rate of primary agricultural products is more or less an average of about 3%, and perhaps for some derivatives for like soya and soya oil can be almost 5%. Whereas if we compare this to biofuels and bioplastics and biofertilizers, we see the growth rate is 3 to 5% higher. And this has a correlation with the need to change agendas of research in our national research systems and to change and channel more to products and processes that are truly more promising. I must insist that ICA is working very hard on the whole question of bioeconomy, and I think that we are on the right track in this. Now, we need to have a joint agenda. That is what we have to work towards, interinstitutional agenda, institutions of technical operations that are working throughout the continent, universities, national in research systems, so that we can ensure that all of the potential of tropical agriculture will indeed be a reality. I'm here would like to deal with five questions that need to have good practices, best practices in each link of our value chains, not only the productive side, but also in the side of processing, giving more attention to the demands and needs of the consumers, improving infrastructure. As I said before, all of the progress that we can make in production is brought low when we do not have good roads, we do not have good cold chains, good trade, electronic trade with our neighboring countries. We have to make an enormous effort to promote digital inclusion, not only to invest, to expand the connectivity, but we have to make great efforts to ensure digital ability. And here, ECA is working very closely with Michael Kramer, winner of a Nobel Prize for economy. We're working, for example, in Brazil to work with smallholders and also in Colombia together with CIAT. The fourth comments that I'd like to make is a need to work very aggressively on the whole question of circular economies, reducing waste, and attacking all of the links of the chain, especially production and consumption, and ensuring that the economy look at the bridge between production and the environment. We also have to look at the question of the availability and access to green financing for tropical agriculture, the whole question of carbon markets, and ensuring that our producers are the main beneficiaries. I think that this is a question that has come to here to stay. It is very important, especially in ECO. We are doing a lot about this particular question. Now, we're the upcoming summit of the United Nations on head of state in September, where they'll be discussing transformation of food systems. Because we have to look at this as agri-food systems. There's no food without agriculture, perhaps. In the 30 years' time, I'll change my way of thinking. But right now, for me and for ICA and for other institutions and countries, these have to be agri-food systems. ICA defends a system with agricultural considerations, with farmers. We have to consider this very forcefully. Here we have the 5 areas of the discussion in the Food Systems Summit: access to food, which has to be healthy and nutritious, to having sustainable means of production. We have to have production that favors nature, promoting equitable living standards and life and means of livelihoods. We have to have great resilience due to vulnerabilities and extreme events. And we have shown that this agricultural sector is resilient. It did not stop, even though we had problems of transport, logistics, and other problems in marketing and others. The problems, for example, of taking our produce to international markets. But I'd just like to say that our farmers and other workers in the rural areas did not stop working, and they were able to generate enough food. We know that, of course, there have been some problems, but at any rate, these problems are problems that may be overcome. I'm so happy that ICA has been named as champions, as one of the champions for this summit. We are trying to participate actively in the promotion of national dialogue. We are collaborating very closely in working in Brazil, Guatemala, Panama, Argentina. We are having regional dialogues. We have just had a very important one and next Friday, we'll be having a meeting with the ministers of Caribbean ministers, Central American ministers. We have having talks about the most relevant topics that will be discussed. And we will also be convening our hemispheric summit for agriculture with the first and second days of September. And we hope that we can have a convergent view coming from the Americas, especially tropical America, which must be duly represented in the international summit that will be taking place at the end of September. Now, in order to flesh out in some way the concepts that I just mentioned. I'd like to stress that this seminar, which was very aptly said by the Minister, Teresa Cristina, this is an appropriate time for us to have a framework of ideas that can be taken to the summit, the Food System Summit, to defend and stress the importance, the central importance of tropical agriculture for food sustainability and nutritional sustainability of the whole planet. We also defend the idea that within this tropical America, agriculture has a role that is very important. It's a leading role. Of course, there are changes that have to be made, but we're always trying to be as efficient, as sustainable as possible, as resilient as possible, understanding the demands of the consumers, but always giving a central role to our producers, our farmers. So as I said at the beginning, they are the very heart and soul of rural inclusion, of the rural areas. In this, as Brazil has been blazing the trail for us, and to show the smart agriculture through national and regional systems, through science and technology, through which, in the context of the crisis that our countries are undergoing, for which we need more investment, more public-private partnerships, and not only the responsibility of the state. We need to have agendas that will allow us to interpret what these new alliances, these new partnerships between productivity and the environment mean. It's time for us to build partnerships and platforms for research and innovation, where the institutes, research and technical cooperation institutes, will strengthen their networks of collaboration, where here Brazil has a central role to play as a country that also transmits knowledge and information, and which has had a very solid trajectory. And also, we must try to build bridges not only with the countries of tropical America, but also with countries of the temperate zone. We are very proud that the Secretariat of Processur, which is very so close to Fontagro and others, and this strengthens our role as ICA as a builder of bridges. And here, I just like to thank Professor Evaldo and thank him as representative of ICA. I'd like to thank him for the contribution that he has made in setting the ball rolling in this session. I'm sure that he has a lot of contribution to make this week and on this tropical agriculture week. We know that in this bridge with agriculture with other continents, much remains to be done to ensure the sustainable development of our planet. Thank you so much once again, and I am ready and willing to help you. I hope that I will have complied with the task set before me. Thank you.
Muito obrigado, Manuel Otero.
Thank you very much.
Sua palestra foi muito
Thank you very much,
Nós agradecemos muito.
Manuel Otero, for that presentation.
Dar continuidade agora com os
We're going to now continue with the other panelists
programação.
that we have on our program.
Tem aqui dois recados de que nós encontramos para marcar a presença, aquelas pessoas que estão nos acompanhando, por favor, verificar.
We have to acknowledge the presence of those who are here with us, and just if you could just confirm your presence in the chat, so that your presence will be recorded. So we will now start with the panelists. Dr. Fadel Ndiame from AGRA, from the who gained his degree from Michigan State University.
Em economia pela University Sheikh Anta Diop de Senegal.
As well as from the Sheikh University in Senegal. He is a specialist in agricultural policy. And so now we would like to invite Dr. Fadel Njiam to take the floor. You have the floor.
Thank you so much, President. Good morning, good afternoon, colleague. It's a great pleasure to be speaking to you from Nairobi. As you said, I'm with the Alliance for a Green Revolution for Africa, AGRA, where I act as a vice president. And it's really a pleasure to join this meeting in light of the agenda to build a bridge. I take good note from my predecessor around the need to come together in order to confront global opportunities and challenges. So the gist of my presentation will revolve around 4 major points. I will briefly give you a sense of the organization AGRA and where it came from, some high-level overview on the future of tropical agriculture in Africa, the kind of role AGRA and partners have been playing in this space, and I will end by exploring few areas where we can start having concrete collaboration based on the knowledge that we have of the progress made by the Latin American and Caribbean countries. Now, very quickly, I mean, some of you may know that AGRA actually was launched and founded under the leadership of the then UN General Secretary, Mr. Kofi Annan, who was calling for what he terms as a uniquely African green revolution. Now, I want to highlight the uniquely because we were cognizant and we still realize that Africa is quite a complex environment. It's a large continent with a lot of diversity. Therefore, we don't believe there is a blueprint. It will not be possible for us to go to Brazil from our friend Manuela and team, copy what you do and paste it. We can learn from you. But the emphasis here is really on a uniquely African green revolution that translate into substantial improvement in the incomes and livelihoods of our people. And what we set out ourselves to do in the last 5 years is really to contribute to increasing the income of at least 30 million farming households while helping 11 African countries to put themselves on a path of sustainable agricultural transformation. Now you can see here that we are continental, but our intervention is really focused around specific agroecologies that you see here on this map. We focus on the Guinea Savannah zone of West Africa, the East African Highlands zone, and the Miombo woodlands. And in this country, the operation we do, our business model is basically focused on providing technical support, grant making, relation with government, convening and engagement, but also strategic partnership. And this is why we are really eager to reach out and take advantage of this platform. Just to give you a sense of our positioning, we host at least 24 nationalities. Our staff has been selected across trained scientists and policy makers from African countries. And we have at least 220 people operating under AGRA. Half of them are female. We're still aiming at parity around that. Now, and this is basically the same information, but where I want to focus here is the vision. We believe that what we need, what is really driving our work is to catalyze and sustain inclusive agricultural transformation across the continent. And later in the presentation, I will show you how we evolved from what we call a phase 1.0, 2.0, and now heading to a 3.0 strategy, currently focused on 11 countries, but considering to move to at least 25 countries in the coming years. Now, very high level overview of agriculture in Africa. As you can imagine, it plays a significant part in the economy of the continent. I mean, by all standards, I think from an employment point of view, it probably occupies more than the majority of our people. But even from a growth and economic opportunity point of view, agriculture is significant after the consumer sector, the resources, and even before the infrastructure investment. And over the year, in the period 2008-2020, we've seen a steady growth of the sector by 5%. And part of my argument is to show you, despite being one big continent, you have a significant large number of production systems, ranging from more extensive pastoralist system in some of the region to more intensive agroforestry-based system. And it's across these agroecologies that we are working with our partners in order to trigger and facilitate the transformation we're talking about. Just to give you some of the numbers that many people would know, we have an increasing population that is quite young. As we speak now, we believe the continent has more than 8 million people, and we project to be 1.5 billion by 2050. One of the sad statistics we have is a significant percentage of this population is currently undernourished. Even though agriculture contributes a lot, up to 30%, it does employ more than 50% of our labor force. And one of the targets we give ourselves by 2050 is for Africa to cope, we need to increase our production by 350% as much food by 2050 than as we do now. Producing better, producing more in a sustainable way is the motto. It's the real challenge and opportunity for this continent. And all of this, despite some of the challenges that we are all faced, COVID-19 is one of them, but it's not the only one. What we see, because of agriculture is mainly focused on smallholder based production, there is a host of challenges that makes it extremely challenging for smallholder farmers to prosper and deliver to their maximum potential. Just to give you a very quick rundown of the nature of the challenges we are faced here, starting with inadequate public investment. For historic reason, agriculture has not been really prioritized since most of our independence days. We still have significantly weak institutions, and the policy and regulatory framework are generally not supportive of agriculture, especially the smallholder agriculture. Significant market failure and breakdown in the market and trade system. And obviously, as you can expect, this translates in a quite inefficient private sector investment, insufficient. Now, all of this translates into lack of access to technologies, to market, and to income-enhancing opportunities for smallholder farmers. These are the host of challenges that we have faced structurally. And as most of you know, it's not alone. In addition to that, we have several other threats that are facing Africa, but also the rest of the world. Just to name few of them: climate change that is affecting significantly smallholder farmers, lack of education and access to technologies. Access to finance is a big challenge given the fragmentation of smallholder farming and the high level of transaction cost involved in servicing and doing business with smallholder farming. And obviously the policy and infrastructure environment is quite inadequate. Now, obviously, and I will just the illustration how climate change, the climate is getting drier, making it even more challenging to produce. Because of all of these reasons, you can also see that compared to other countries, the level of utilization of input is generally extremely low. I mean, I'll just give an example because if in Brazil, the estimate is we are using, let me take China, 346 kilo per hectare. In a country like Mozambique, it's 6. That just give you an example. Despite the political commitment made during the Abuja Declaration in 2006 to raise the level of utilization of fertilizer to 50 kilo, on average, we are still around 20 kilo per hectare. Yet, despite all of these challenges, we believe that there is significant opportunities for agriculture on the continent. Firstly, as we all know, the continent is quite large and there is still space and the right environment to increase production. Despite low level of productivity, we know that there is significant margin for improvement. I have here an example of the potential yield per hectare for maize in the Eastern Highland against what we are currently producing. We have a margin of 500% improvement when the right things are done. Right technologies, agronomic practices, proper environment, all of this can help us improve significantly the productivity of our agriculture. The fact that we have a growing population is also a good asset. I mean, an increase in the demand, but also a human capital that can be grown through education is a great opportunities. Through digitalization, better investment in infrastructure and technology, we believe that we can leapfrog. We can build on all the learning and the experience that other countries like in Latin America have done through the South-South triangular cooperation mechanism to fast track and make sure that Africa can turn around the corner and start producing to the level that we are possible. So we still have a lot of unexploited resources. There's the water resources, and we have significant deposit of material that can be used to transform African agriculture. Quickly, just to give you, not all is bad news. We do see some significant improvement in the reduction in the rate of poverty across certain countries. And we'll come back to it, where within a period of reasonable period, we've seen a trend toward a decrease, a reduction in the level of poverty across the continent. What we see as an opportunity moving forward is mobilizing more increased public expenditure in agriculture, building on the experience that Mr. Manuelo just spoke to earlier. We know the high payoff of investment in agri-research, in infrastructure, in policy, and this corresponds to one of the commitment of the African leaders through CADEP and the Malabo Declaration. Opportunity to expand irrigated area on the continent and reduce the effect of drought, significant possibility to improve productivities, enhance better use of input, enhance market incentive, and we see the big boost is to be able to attract young people into agriculture using modern technologies. Now, very quickly, this is the challenge that we have taken since the creation of AGRA in 2006. I already gave you a sense of what we have been doing over the year. In the last 5 years, we kind of focus on really creating the condition to drive impact at scale. And where I want to emphasize is a set of investment around farmer, system, and national level to respond to the reality that you need a systemic transformation from the policy environment to the downstream delivery system. So we focus on 3 bodies of work, starting with state capacity and policy engagement, acknowledging that unless you have a significant leadership and commitment by African government, it is not possible to transform agriculture. And we are seeing significant progress across the continent, government taking up the leadership to drive that. Second element is around the system development, recognizing the reality of smallholder farmers, fragmented, undercapitalized, and very difficult to serve because of very high transaction cost. This justifies an investment in a network, in an infrastructure of agro dealers and village-based advisory services to make sure that technologies and knowledge are put at the doorstep of smallholder farmer. The last area is around partnership, not only public-private partnership to de-risk agriculture, but also partnership across continent. This is why we have very good working relationship with the IBRAF, Brazil Africa Institute, and we are exploring opportunities really to facilitate exchange of experience between Latin America and Africa based on the similarity of their agroecologies and their experience. So these are the area where we work on. I already spoke about it. These are the type of investment we have done since the start of AGRA. To the point I was making earlier, the focus was making sure that we support availability of yield enhancing technologies through different areas. Second focus around strengthening the downstream delivery system, and more recently putting more emphasis on delivering at scale, mainly through stronger government contribution, but also facilitation platform of collaboration based on small and medium-sized enterprises. All of this hinges on having a proper policy environment that enable access to finance, market, and trade. What are we seeing emerge? This is a significant task. It's a long haul. It's something that will require a lot of time. We are starting to see some emerging, encouraging results that I've highlighted here around the state capability and policy engagement. We have been able at least to work with 8 countries to design national agricultural investment plan and flagship that have significant potential of impacting a large number of smallholder farmers. A number of policy reform are being pursued across 11 countries with the view of enabling the private sector to help deliver good technology at scale. At the system development level, I want to highlight the support to what we call the village-based agri-advisory. These are basically semi-private extension officers, farmers who are more advanced and who avail their technologies and their know-how to their neighbor, that enable us to significantly close the gap on the huge extension farmer ratio that we experience across the continent. We also want to highlight significant investment in inclusive, innovative financing tool that enable to de-risk agricultural value chain operator so that they can continue to bring smallholder farmer into more lucrative value chain. I want to highlight around the partnership, the fact that every year we organize what we call the African Green Revolution Forum. The next one will happen in Morocco this year in September. And I would like officially to invite all of you to come to probably the biggest event that speak about agricultural transformation in the continent, bring together from head of state to farmers to partners to explore ideas and policy on how to turn the situation around. With that, we are currently building our vision for 2030, and I don't want to repeat what Manuela said. We see the UN food system as a new opportunity to build back better in a more sustainable way. We take it that the great opportunity is to be able to focus on promoting healthier diet for all, recognizing that each country and each continent will have to build their own pathway to this sustainable food system. In that context, we are eager to explore how to work with you all. We are aware of some of the amazing experience. I just highlighted a few of them here. Embrapa's experience around in the Cerrados in reclaiming millions of hectares of arid soil land is something that we are particularly interested in. We would like to explore opportunity to work around agricultural development model that Brazil and other countries have done. We want to explore collaboration between our national research institution at the national, regional, and continental level. We are interested in your crop livestock system and the extent to which we can build on the knowledge and the experience of Brazil among the big 5 food exporter, particularly around the beef and soybean. We want to be your partner in co-development and action on climate change. And finally, explore opportunity to work together on strategy for reforestation and rehabilitating degraded land and ecosystem. With that, President, I thank you for your attention, and I look forward to the rest of the discussion. Thank you very much.
Muito obrigado, Dr. Fadel.
Thank you very much. Mr. Fadel Indiame. Thank you very much for pointing out the comparison with Brazil and the implications for Africa, and to take advantage of the existing technologies. Thank you very much. Now we have a presentation by Dr. Muhammad Ibrahim of Katie. He has a bachelor's a degree in agricultural sciences from the University of Guyana, a master's in nutrition.
Desde 2014, ele é gerente do programa de inovação em produtividade e
He
competitividade.
is in charge of the innovation competitiveness program and is associated with the ECA technical development program. He is in charge of the Center for Agricultural, Tropical Agriculture. And so now we would like to thank him and give him the floor to begin his presentation.
I would like to thank ICA, Dr. Manuel Otero and Embrapa for inviting Cathy to participate in this event. Also, I would like to join with the Director General of ICA to provide our support to the candidacy of Dr. Alison Pauninelli, a candidacy for the Nobel Peace Prize. I'm going to speak about productive and low carbon tropical beef and dairy systems and address the issues related to these production systems. As you can see from this map and the cattle densities, and based on what Dr. Otero mentioned about tropical regions, you can see there are large cattle densities and the importance for tropical regions to respond to the increasing demand of meat and milk by 2050. The countries of importance will include Brazil, Paraguay, Bolivia, Colombia, Mexico, Australia, East Africa, etc. All these tropical regions have good climate, natural resources, and conditions for providing the increase in demand of meat and milk for a growing population. Brazil, for example, have shown an increasing trend on export compared to the rest of the world, similar to India or Australia, more in Brazil. And the projections that they will continue to be an important player in terms of the contribution to the amount of meat being consumed globally. Besides the economic aspects, livestock systems do play an important role to contribution to the natural systems, to the human systems, which the global agenda for livestock with FAO, Henning Steinfeld and his group is leading, and has several important actions as it relates to climate action, clean water, life on land, biodiversity conservation, and in terms of the human system, has importance in terms of zero hunger, no poverty, good health, gender equity, etc., to demonstrate the importance of what livestock, especially cattle systems, have in terms of the livelihoods of people. This is important because you will know today, there's a debate on the use of synthetic beef, looking for more subtle diets, healthy diets, in which there's a question about meat and milk consumption. But we need to understand the trade-offs in the ecosystem services biodiversity. And I'm going to show you some data, which based on evidence-based information and scientific knowledge, where well-managed cattle production systems are providing ecosystem services while increasing productivity and providing social benefits. We need, however, to address the issues related to the cattle production. One is looking at how do you bend the forest transition curves, work done by the World Bank on which CATI as an institution has collaborated to look at beef and to some extent milk supply chains and importance in as drivers for deforestation and environmental degradation. And for this reason, we need technologies for sustainable intensification, look at trade and commercial agreements to provide incentives for sustainable practices and incentives to promote adoption of good practices, and at the same time looking at responsible consumers to address the issues that is under discussion about the overconsumption of beef and to an extent milk. This is the work done by Eat Lancet report, which shows many countries, for example, in North America, overconsuming beef compared to the reference diet. This is something in question. We need to address these issues. But on the other hand, as my colleague mentioned from Africa, we need to look at how people can be consuming more milk, for example, to look at the nutritional aspects. There's still undernourished population, and therefore we need not a one-size-fits-all, but more a targeted approach of how we're going to look at the livestock products and consumption. The challenges, however, for livestock also in the cattle production is on the issues on climate change. Beef, an average of 387 kilograms CO2 per kilogram of protein produced, and dairy 122 with equivalents. I will demonstrate to you that with good practices, we can reduce the carbon footprint of these cattle production systems towards carbon neutrality, and with some good examples at different scales to show that we can work to develop cattle systems through sustainable intensification. Another issue under discussion is the vulnerability of cattle production systems in tropical America. As Manuel Otero mentioned, in terms of Mesoamerica, which is one of the vulnerable areas for climate change, we need to look at the vulnerabilities that farmers are facing in terms of the climate risk, but also to look at the synergies between adaptation and mitigation to climate change using ecosystem-based adaptation tools, which Kathy has been working on to help farmers to develop climate-smart landscapes, looking at a landscape approach. These are some examples of evidence-based results that we have with scientific research with many of our partners that we work in the region, which shows that improved forages with CIAT and Embrapa has been developing and forages and also silvopastoral systems that Kathy has worked with its partners can reduce emission by more than 50% compared to the baseline, while increasing the productivity of the system by more than 600%. Strategic supplementation in the dry season, which is a major problem in the region, by 48% and 300% in the production compared to the baseline. And now we are advancing and using more tropical breeds adapted to a changing environment, a warmer condition, which Kathy has been working on, and especially using some of the breeds that Brazil has bred and with other places in tropical regions, and showing that it's possible that through genetic improvement also you can reduce emissions of greenhouse gases and at the same time improve productivity of the system. In synthesis, I would like to say that there are good practices available for transforming the cattle sector into a low carbon economy, which is productive and at the same time providing social benefits and environmental benefits. For example, we have many agro-silvopastoral systems which we are working on in Central America and also in Brazil and in many of the southern regions, which you're producing timber from these areas and reducing the pressure on the deforestation and also providing additional income to the farmers. Besides, the European Union and many of the countries today are talking about the green economy. And where do you value the on-site benefits and the off-site benefits, which are the natural capital and ecosystem services? And this is a good example where we have results showing the genetic improvement, improved forages, mixed crop systems, and silvopastoral systems through sustainable intensification can provide on-site benefits by improving the milk productivity, beef productivity, timber production, more income to people that are working in the farms, while you have the offsite benefits in terms of biodiversity, water infiltration, and the carbon footprint reduced by more than 80%. What we need to do is better valuing of the ecosystem services. How do you provide farmers with the benefits from the public goods, which are the ecosystem services, and also making consumer aware of the role that farmers are playing in providing these benefits and having economic instruments and financial tools to helping farmers to remove the barriers for adoption of these sustainable practices. And I'm going to present some examples that we've been working on. Again, tropical pasture ecosystems, as you know, the environment that we work in are good for good growth, especially when you have good rainfall conditions and soil conditions. For carbon sequestration with greenhouse gases. And I would like to demonstrate that tropical pastures in Latin America, there are good examples where there are important sinks for carbon capture and also helping the countries to reach their objectives for the INDCs. An example in Brazil, for example, work done by Embrapa, which shows that the conversion of degraded pastures to silvopastoral systems, you increase the stocking rate, you increase the productivity by 5-fold, while at the same time, the net carbon balance, the CO2 equivalents, you have a 2 tons balance in terms of the carbon sequestration when you take off the emissions, showing that these farms can be carbon neutral in the integration of agro-silvopastoral systems that you're working on. Inside, you have to quantify the other benefits from trees. You have the increased stocking rates, and also silvopastoral systems are carbon neutral. Now, Kathy has been working on a project with NAMA facility, and this is one of the many projects on NAMA livestock. For Honduras, Brazil has a NAMA livestock. We are cooperating with many actors. Carbon Trust is one of these actors we're working on with, and the local organizers in different areas, to see how do you have a transformation of the Honduran livestock sector to contribute to a low carbon economy. How do you move from a pilot level in the research, the systems research, a pilot scale, and at a national level to have the implementation of policies and incentives to have a transformation of the sector. The sector is very important, $46 million contribution, and we have different scenarios that we have looked for targeting these farmers for reducing the emissions. The strategy for the NAMA is to support the project in using a triple win, a triple A, looking at farmer education and extension services, which is very weak in the region, in the tropical regions. The financial instruments, looking at de-risking climate finance. For example, the speaker before spoke about de-risking the risk of people, of farmers. And looking at the political framework that we need to promote the transformation of this sector into a low carbon economy. Increasing productivity and profitability, reducing emission, and increasing the carbon sequestration is a net goal of this project with the NAMA facility. So this project is working on an innovative climate financing scheme, which is creating a trust fund for providing farmers with credit, and at the same time providing a fund for looking at the risk and to cover the guarantees that farmers need, especially when you have a risky environment in a dry climate, for example, in droughts, to make farmers have more confidence in investing on the change that they need on the farms. So we are advancing on this project. There are good examples of the ex-ante analysis, which is showing positive results of how, with the 211 baseline farms that we're working in Honduras, what the farmers will need to look for carbon neutrality and at the same time improving the productivity. We need the farmers with at least 60% of the natural pastures with trees and farms, improve pastures with trees and farms by 39%, live fences, pine or broadleaf forests, 25%, and commercial forest plantation, 19%. So you can see this is a mosaic of the different land use changes in a farm plan, which promotes carbon neutrality of the farms, but at the same time, a win-win situation for the carbon, biodiversity, and water, and diversifying the production of the farms. So this is an example of the work that we have been doing with the local stakeholders in the region. I would like to turn in the last slides to talk about Costa Rica, which has got a plan for decarbonization by 2050. You will probably know that in the 70s, Costa Rica has had a bad image in terms of the cattle ranching, the deforestation, and the negative ecological footprint that cattle ranching left to the country by the large-scale deforestation related to the hamburger connection. You can see from the data that we have in this slide that through technological innovations and good policies, milk productivity and beef to some extent have increased over time from 1980 to 2020. The pasture area have decreased by 2.4 to 1.3 million through sustainable intensification with good practices and good technologies and management. The better forages that we have got, black areas, the panicum and silvopasture system. And more important, Costa Rica has reverted the process of from a deforestation to a net forest gain from 26 to 58% through better policies for payment of ecosystem services, private sector engagement, and these are good examples where the technologies can move from a system level towards a national scale, demonstrating the impacts on the different metrics or indicators that have been used to measure the carbon neutrality that we have. So we are advancing to see how CATI can work with ICA and other organizations in the region to scale out these policies and these technologies for making Central America and Latin America, tropical Latin America, moving towards a decarbonization plan. I would like to finalize to say that productive and low carbon cattle systems, low carbon means to produce more with less GEI emissions, the greenhouse emissions, and increase carbon capture. We need to have an inclusive growth, create wealth, employment, and minimize negative social impacts on farmers. Ecological sustainability to reduce the environmental impacts while safeguarding the natural resources. This is very important because it's a discussion of a safe operating space on the planet and a discussion on what is the issues related to the pandemic of how the biodiversity loss is affecting zoonotic diseases. And here where livestock grazing plays an important role. And appropriately nationally, considering the NDC goals, natural resources and objectives for sustainable development. Many of the countries have set their goals and targets for sustainable development and NDC, in which 12 countries in tropical America has livestock and especially cattle as one of the important components in the agriculture sector for reducing the emissions. So thank you very much for listening to my speech.
Thank you very much. Let me see. Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Hamed. Nós vamos ter agora a apresentação do Dr. Jesus Quintana.
We will listen to the presentation from Jesus Quintana, Director General for the Alianza de Biodiversity International and SEAT. He graduated from the University of Madrid in biodiversity, agriculture, and sociology from the University of Spain, and has a master's in development from the university in the United Kingdom. He has almost 30 years in the sector with a focus on international cooperation in various countries. And so Dr. Jesus Quintana, you have the floor. Good morning. Thank you, first of all, for having invited me. I'd like to thank ICA and its Director General tell us to be here and speak with our partners as well as the other colleagues with whom we work, such as the FAO, ICA, MBRAPA, and others in this important event, and my co-panelists as well. I'm going to share my screen to be able to show you my presentation. So let us begin. I am going to be speaking to you about the promotion how can we change our agricultural systems from a more traditional view to a more systematic, innovative system through innovation and research, which is why we're here today to have this discussion. How, with different partners and actors, we can promote innovation and a different vision, a different view of agriculture, and have a more concerted approach in the future. We are facing certain challenges, hunger and malnutrition, which are the greatest challenges that we have within the United Nations and which humanity has decided to support, and how these food systems, not just agriculture, but this holistic view of chains, how can we provide solutions to the challenges that we face? As I said, hunger and malnutrition, but also social poverty, the lack of income, the lack of well-being. COVID and the pandemic has highlighted how important this is. How health is intimately related to the capacity to feed ourselves better and to produce better and create more income. We need to see how these systems continue to be threats and challenges in terms of water, in terms of forestation, and how these phenomena, which are related, such as climate change, amplify the challenges, and how should we act? How should we overcome these challenges? Bearing in mind the problem that the speakers before me have highlighted, having a low carbon economy, reducing waste, having more resilient, inclusive, and healthy system with regard to producers, consumers, women and children, rural communities, small producers, small farmers, indigenous communities, and how does all of this affect the rural areas? This is what we want to call the new agriculture, but it's not really new. It's a new vision of these agricultural systems. They have their own space, but there are chains, there are consumers, markets, policies, and institutions that are involved. So, first of all, I'd like to start by talking about our role as an institution. CGR is the network representing a large research institutions, 15 of them, and which are being transformed to be able to better meet and overcome the challenges and to have a greater impact at the global and local level. And so CIAT, the International Center for Tropical Agriculture, which has been in existence for more than 50 years, we're looking at how we can bring about a response, a solution to a common food systems and how we can work on systems and landscapes that will be able to feed peoples. It's an important mission because it has to do with policies, funding, individual and collective actions, but also research and providing solutions to conserve agricultural biodiversity, to face the challenges of climate change and take advantage of the opportunities climate funding, the climate fund, to include technologies, the digital aspect, which was mentioned before, and to have an integrated system. I'm going to talk about a few examples. A picture is worth 1,000 words, as we say. And I'm going to talk about some initiatives that we have carried out with different partners, and we've been working in different parts of this holistic system. And in one part, we have the Association for the Amazon, where we're working with USAID financing to conserve the biodiversity and food systems. And we've invited the private sector, which is very important, so that we can yield good results, and to see how we can have new ideas involving young people, joint ventures, which can participate in this, especially in Brazil, in these PPIs. Another example, a second example, which is different, sustainable financing, but we're looking at it from the point of view of how we can have more nutritious varieties of food crops. We have maize, we have rice and beans, and through crossbreeding, we're looking at different ways of approaching this. And a third example where we apply innovation and technology and where we're working with partners is the program Connecting Space to Village. It's a world initiative, a global initiative financed by USAID, where we put knowledge and geospatial information for better monitoring, to have better tools and training of national and local groups, and where we involve communities and indigenous groups, as well as conservation groups, NGOs, and foundations, to have a better knowledge about flooding, about fires, about droughts, and so on, and help them to anticipate so as to act better, to anticipate and therefore have appropriate actions. And then turning to we're looking at the involvement of the private sector, as I said before, in initiatives of interest. And another example where we sit down at the table involving governments, producers, universities, and other groups to work on this model, agroclimatic technical roundtables involving more than 10 countries in the region. About 500,000 farmers are involved, combining local knowledge, from universities and so on. But what is most important is creating trust and confidence between small farmers, institutions, so that they know that it is possible to work together to be able to face the challenges produced by climate change and to have greater production, more production to support their families, but also the society which eats their products. One important aspect is information, and we need to look at the different points of view and the different aspects. We're in Vietnam and Cali to understand what this is. We're looking at the complexities, the elements that we need to take account of. First of all, the production system. How does this arrive at processing, but also warehousing and distribution? How is it processed? So it's a chain. This promotion of foods in terms of affordability. How does the consumer behave, consumer patterns? Group consumers, individuals, families, what do they need? How can they feed themselves better? And so in these diets, more healthy diets, we're looking at a system that is more environmentally friendly and so on. We're looking at the biophysical, demographic drivers, policy actors to come up with more concrete solutions in this chain, in health, in food security, and other aspects. And lastly, a sixth example, last but not least, is we want to be able to we're creating an innovative center, which is a global hub for conservation. We have over 600,000 samples of different products, frijoles, and we're looking at how to conserve energy, looking at the consumption of water and conservation to be able to increase capacity for researchers, but not just for a closed select group, but open it up so that we can innovate in conservation, in these conservation methods, and open it up to the public in general, to families, students, young people, and all persons who can be involved. So this brings me to the end of my presentation with final points and conclusions to talk about how we, as an alliance, how can we help to transform these food systems and on the basis of innovation and technology. I'd like to start by talking about the critical role of science and research. As my colleagues have spoken about, in the face of the challenges, we need to research more, and we need to have people more present, and we are fully committed to this. Secondly, the importance of information and data collection to be able to manipulate and manage the information, to provide it to the public, to universities, to the private sector, and to the society. Third, focus on innovation and creative solutions. We have COVID, the pandemic, and diseases, globalization, climate change, and deterioration of natural resources to consider. We need more resources, financial, technical, and human. And we are involved in this training. And last point is a focus on dialogue and coordination of actors. And all of this is aimed at placing emphasis on having better public policies. Change doesn't just come from individual action and group action, but better policies at local, federal, and national levels. More capacities, openness, transparency, and the ability to share with communities, youth, young people, women, and so on. So inclusiveness and all of this leads us to a transformative vision, which will be presented at this important summit. After more than 30 years, we'll be having a food summit convened by the United Nations, but many things have changed over those years. So how can we, from a holistic, integrated approach that is more comprehensive, take account of the reality, production, species? How can this chain, how can we take account of cold chains, the role, how can we transform better? How can we feed rural and urban areas, young people, women, and other groups? We're seeking greater resilience and sustainability so that we can better face the challenges of climate change. My colleagues have stressed the importance of alliances that need to be formed to be able to face these challenges. We can't do this in silos, in an isolated way. And how can we do this? Through science, innovation, and modernization. Thank you very much. Back to the moderator. Thank you very much.
Realmente muito importante, ciência e alianças.
Thank you. Science, innovation, and alliances. Thank you very much for that. Now,
we now have the presentation by Juan Kibet.
Dr. Kibet, ele é bacharel em educação agrícola pela West.
Dr. Kibet is a graduate of the university, Western University, and he is also a professor at the University of Kabianga in Kenya. He's a director of postgraduate studies at the universities. Please, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much, President. I'm going to share my screen. I hope you can see my screen.
Yes, yes.
Yes, you can. Thank you very much. I would like to present my presentation. It is Future of Sustainable Agriculture in Kenya. And I'd like to thank the presenters who have made their presentations here. I'm especially going to build on Dr. Fadel Jilanga of Agra, who presented that they are focusing on putting the small-scale farmers at the center of transformation agenda. My presentation is about the fact that in Kenya, where 85% of the land is classified as arid and semi-arid, that is ASAL land, it has only 15% of the land that is arable. Despite the small percentage of land that is arable, agriculture still forms a very integral part of Kenya's economy, contributing to up to 26% of the GDP. In addition, Kenya Kenya's agriculture is highly vulnerable to climate change, since it depends heavily on rain-fed agriculture. And besides the risks of climatic challenges, agriculture in Kenya experiences what forms the theme of my presentation, in that they are unsustainable innovations and slow uptake of innovations. And Kenya's agriculture is mainly small scale. There are small scale farmers who are practicing agriculture in Kenya, and they have this problem of unable to adopt innovations because these innovations are unsustainable. And the reason is maybe because of the extension methods that are used. So in order for Kenya's agriculture to be sustainable, it is important that we adopt agricultural innovations that are sustainable, as well as methods that are also sustainable. I'm going to present, if my slide, I have a problem with my slide not moving. Sorry, President, my slide is stuck. It's not moving. Maybe.
Eu creio, ok. Eu creio que
do we have the
por favor, o pessoal do operacional pode ajudar?
Perhaps we can get some help from a technician.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you try some keys on the board?
Can you try pressing some keys on your keyboard?
No próprio computador, o senhor pode tentar mover a tela, não? Não está funcionando?
It's not working. Doesn't seem to be working.
Maybe I could stop sharing and then start again.
Sí, por favor.
Yes, maybe I can continue using. Yes, it's now moving. Sorry about that.
Yes.
It's now moving.
Yes.
Yes, I'm sorry about that. I was saying that the problem in agriculture, in Kenya's agriculture, is use of unsustainable innovations as well as unsustainable extension methods. And I'm going to talk about 3 methods that were developed and have been proved to be sustainable methods. The first one is use of Desmodium species, Desmodium ancillatum in controlling striker weed. Maize and sorghum in Kenya are very important to most farmers because most farmers depend on them for food and for income. Despite these benefits, there's a problem in the production of these 2 crops because of the serious threat of weeds. And one of the most difficult weeds that has been observed in the production of maize is Striga montica. Now, Striga montica is a weed that is parasitic and it affects maize and sorghum by attaching itself to maize and affecting maize in that it makes it to be stunted, it doesn't grow, and therefore the production is not very good. Most farmers are unable to afford conventional methods of controlling these weeds. However, scientists at the International Center of Insect Physiology and Ecology, ECP, in Kenya have discovered that intercropping the stereo.
Doctor Kibet, disculpe que lo interrumpa.
Yeah, yes, sir.
Dr. Kibit, we have a problem with your audio. So perhaps if you could take off your earphones and just speak to us directly through your computer, please.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Lo escuchamos un poco similar.
It seems more or less the same.
¿Puedes hablar ahora, profesor?
Can you speak again? Can you say something so we can test it?
Profesor, ¿podríamos apagar su cámara para ver si es un tema de internet?
Can you
Entonces
perhaps switch off your video? Because it might be a connectivity issue. So maybe if we just heard you and didn't see you, it might help.
Pode falar, professor, para escutarmos?
Could you say something, please, Professor?
Profesor, ¿nos escucha ahora?
Can you hear us now, Professor? Can you hear us now?
Vamos a ver ahora.
Okay, let's see what happens now.
Profesor Kibet, ¿me escucha?
Can you hear me, Professor Kibet?
Ok, el profesor salió, entonces
Well, the Professor Kibet has dropped off, so I'd just like to ask the moderator to kindly continue so that when he rejoins us, we'll be able to hear him. So when he's able to connect once again, we can continue. However, I just ask the moderator to continue. Go ahead, sir, please. Thank you.
Passaremos então a última palestra de hoje.
So I'll go on to the last speaker for today, Dr. Lafarge. Dr. Lafarge is a graduate in biochemistry from the University of Paris, 11 rather. He has a master's in ecosystems and is a doctorate in physiology and cultivation from the same institutions. He is a member of CIRAD in Montpellier. Please, Dr. Lafarge, please be so kind as to take the floor for your presentation.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Moderator. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. I'm very pleased to be here with you, and I'm very pleased that CIRAD was invited to give a talk today, and I thank all of the organizers for their great job, and particularly Erika, who is, I think, organizing most of the conference. So what I'm going to talk about is a network of platforms in partnership for research and training. So I'm Tanguy Lafarge, I'm CIRAD delegate for platforms in partnership, and I'm working under the direction for research and strategy at CIRAD. Just one slide briefly to talk to you about CIRAD. So CIRAD is a French agricultural research and international cooperation organization. It's organized through 3 scientific departments. One is the biological systems, who aims at understanding biological system from molecule to ecosystem. Another department is the tropical production and processing systems, which is analyzing farming practices and farming system performance from plot to farm level. And the last department is the environments and societies, which is supporting players in rural areas from a local to a global scale. CIRAD is about 1,700 staff in total. Most of the staff are located in the scientific hub, which is located in Montpellier, in the south of France, where I am right now. And it's also, CIRAD is organized under 12 overseas regional offices. And so one of these offices is in Brasilia, and another one is in Colombia, as you can see on the screen. And one of the particularity of CIRAD is that there are 300 outposted scientists. And so these scientists are located in Africa, in South Asia, or in Latin America. And they are hosted under within universities, local universities, or local institutes. CIRAD is working on many products, and I can give you here examples of 15 tropical value chains that are under study at CIRAD, and you can see this list here. It goes from banana and plantain to cocoa, coffee, sugarcane, coconut, fruit and vegetables, rubber, dairy, oil palm, animal production, forest resources, rice, sorghum, roots, and tubers. So what I'm going to talk today is about a network of platforms in partnership for research and training. There are a total of 21 platforms, and these platforms are supporting the major transitions for sustainable development in the South. You can see how they can be organized through regional areas here on the map. So one platform is located in the Mediterranean. 7 platforms are located in Western and Central Africa. 5 platforms in Southern Africa and the Indian Ocean, 4 platforms in Southeast Asia, and 4 platforms in Latin America and the Caribbean. In each of these platforms, it is organized through an interdisciplinary local consortium in which all the partners, and these partners you will see on the next slide are kind of different type of partners, but all of the partners sign a long-term agreement to work together under a shared governance, which is very important. There is not one partner who is leading the platform, but it's really a shared governance. It's also a principle, one of the principles is to pool resources. So it's human resources, it's facilities, it's funding opportunities. Also, these platforms are anchored in the local context, and they are able to build some project and get some funding from different donors. And when you are part of one platform, you are also part of the overall network, which is finally a network of 170 institutions, pardon me, and 78 states, which gives a lot of international recognition and visibility. So, as I said, the partners in each of these platforms, mostly they are institutes and universities. So there are more than 100 institutes and universities. Also, there are some regional centers. And for example, IICA is one of the partners. Cartier is one of the partners as well of some of the platforms. There are also CGR centers who are partners, and 7 of the CGR centers are partners of at least one of the platforms. And also some international organizations like FAO and OIE, but also some decision makers, some colleagues from private sector, some local and regional NGO, and some farming associations. The kind of products issued from this platform, so our publication and presentation, which is quite conventional, but also organizing some conference, developing some master courses, and also developing some summer schools. The training component is a real important component of these platforms. But also, there are some core members, and you can see on the screen a lot of type of core members within these platforms, but also in each of these platforms, you can have some associate members. And among the associate members, we also have decision makers, private sector, local NGOs, farm associations. What is very important within this platform is to work with the beneficiaries, is to be able to develop products for the beneficiaries. And so different modalities of interaction are used. And for example, you can see here multi-stakeholder projects, participatory research, roundtable, demonstration farms, innovation platform, living labs. These are the kind of modalities that are used to be closer, to work closer to the beneficiaries. So what kind of products can this platform deliver to the beneficiaries? For example, on-the-job training for farmers, improved varieties, field innovations, digital tools, policy briefs, advocacies, books, brochures, and videos. So you can see the panel of products that can be developed from the platforms, and also the panel of partners. What I want to emphasize, it's really an open process, and any partner who is interested, any partner who is ready to share resources, to participate to the governance, is happy to join after of course some meetings and agreements, is happy to join and to sign an agreement to work within these different platforms. So if I make a focus on Latin America and the Caribbean, there are 4 platforms here. So one is CaribVet. So CaribVet is a Caribbean Animal Health Network. So within this platform, there are 48 partners including 34 ministries of agriculture and veterinary services. So some of the partners are FAO, OIE, but also EICA, for example, is one of the partners. The keywords of this platform relate to early warning mechanism, epidemiological surveillance, risk analysis, disaster risk reduction, capacity building, and you can imagine that under the COVID area, this is really crucial and very important. Another platform is Agroforesta, which is a Mesoamerican platform for agroforestry. It's hosted in Cartier. So there are 5 partners. So ICA is one partner, Cartier, also eCraft Biodiversity. And the keywords of this platform is more like related to carbon and water balance, varietal improvement, post-harvest management, disease resistance, geographical indications and traceability, environmental services, digital agriculture. Another platform is PPAL, which stands for Public Policies and Rural Development in Latin America. This platform includes 17 partners, plus about 35 associate partners, and all of these partners come from 14 different countries in Latin America. So you can imagine the size of this platform. Among the partners, I can say FAO, also EICA is one of the partners of this platform. And the major keywords relate to policy making for development and alleviation of poverty, the role of the state, public-private partnerships, public policy instruments, training and capacity building. And another platform in Latin America is the platform Amazonia, which stands for Forest, Agriculture and Territorial Development in Amazonia. This platform includes 4 partners. Embrapa is one of the partners, and the main keywords are low impact and eco-efficiency management, remote sensing, land use mapping and assessment, advisory services for sustainable territory policies, territories management, and crop, livestock, forestry integration. All of these platforms, their main mission is, of course, to work for sustainable development through knowledge generation and capacity building. You can observe that there is a large diversity of scientific themes among these platforms because they are quite distant platforms with many partners. But what is important is that there are interconnections within this platform, which is very important. At this regional scale, there are, of course, interconnection within this platform so that one platform can gain some expertise from another platform. Another thing important is that CIRAD is partner of all of these 4 platforms, but also CIRAD is partner of the 21 platform. And so CIRAD has an important role to play here as a coordinator amongst all of these 21 platforms. And for example, if we look at a specific, for example, like integrated approach to plant, animal, and ecosystem health, you can see among the 21 platforms that 4 platforms are devoted to this theme. And so we can tackle this theme, we can tackle these issues at a very global scale. And this is what is very interesting in this approach, is to interconnect all of these different platforms with related to one specific themes. So this is just here an example of a thematic sub-network. And we may think that it could go to the emergence of meta platforms with high scientific value. Let's give you another example here, which regarding agroecological transition engineering. You can see a lot of platforms are devoted to this theme. And for example, if I just mention agroforestry, for example, I can tell you that, of course, the platform Agroforesta located in Gatier, is concerned with agroforestry, but not only this one. There is also another platform in Cameroon who is looking after agroforestry, another platform in Madagascar, and another platform in Cambodia. So you can see that if we look at a specific agronomical system or a specific theme, we can tackle issues at the global scale within this entire network. Another example here, like biodiversity as a lever of development and resilience, you can see the platforms that are looking after this very important theme. An example on territories as levers for sustainable and inclusive development. And you can see here the sub-network of the platform who are addressing this important issue. Another example here, supporting the transition to more inclusive and sustainable food systems. And you can see again here the platforms that are tackling this theme. So once again, within this network, we can really work at the global level just by doing interconnection between all of these platforms. And so all the partners of one platform can benefit for this interconnection with the other platform. For example, it's possible to share students, it's possible to organize workshops, possible to develop some project together, and so to have global projects. And so it's very interesting in this way. If I come back to and give a focus to one of these platforms, which is a platform in Amazonia. So this platform, pardon me, is based on the complementarity between sustainable management of forest resources and farming and livestock activities. And you can see here are illustrated some different projects that have been developed by this platform with different donors. And you can see that the activities of these different projects are well distributed among a very large area here in Brazil. So you can see also, even just within a platform, we have a large scale of activities on a very large geographical zone. And this gives you the strengths and the ability of this network and on an individual platform to produce very interesting knowledge and also very important training and capacity building for all the partners. And once again, this is really an open, it's really open to partners who are interested, who have some expertise to bring in the process, and who are able to share governance, to share facilities and other products. So this is my last slide. I was very happy to present this network, and I will be ready for questions if there are any. Thanks a lot for your patience.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lafarge. Very interesting your talk. Muito obrigado. Nós teremos, então, agora, nós já estamos conectados novamente, Professor Kibet.
I think that now we're connected to Professor Kibet, and he will now be able to make his presentation. So, Dr. Kibet?
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me now, President. I hope you can hear me now.
Hope you can hear me now, Mr. Chairman.
Escuchamos muy bien. Adelante.
Hello? Hello?
Fuerte y claro. Adelante.
Yes. Yes, we can hear you.
Hello, can I go ahead?
Yes, you may go ahead. We can hear you.
Yes, Professor, you may go ahead.
Okay. Sorry. I would like to apologize profusely because of my technological problems here. I have requested that one of the technicians can present my presentation on the screen. I already talked about the fact that Kenya is an agricultural country, although most of the land is classified as arid and semi-arid. 15% is arable in nature. Despite the small percentage of the land available to agriculture in Kenya, the agriculture contributes to about 26% of the GDP. The other point I would like to make is that the majority of the farmers in Kenya are involved in small-scale production. The other point I wanted to make is that agricultural innovations or technologies that have been developed in Kenya and indeed in Africa have been adopted in a slow manner. And what has come out through research is the fact that most of the innovations that have been developed are not cost effective. The farmers are unable to adopt because of the nature, the complexity of the innovations, and also the costs of the innovations. So I would like to present 3 innovations that have been developed locally that are cost effective, and these innovations are readily available, and the problem with these innovations is that the adoption level is still low. So I'll also talk about an extension method that can be used in order to ensure that innovations that are developed, especially sustainable ones, can be adopted by most of the farmers. Next slide, Karen. Next slide, next. Yes, thank you. The first one is the use of a plant called Desmodium ancinatum, to control a very troublesome weed that affects maize. Maize is a very important crop in Kenya. Most of the population in Kenya depend on maize for food and also for a source of income. But maize has been greatly, the production of maize in Kenya has been affected greatly by a weed called Striga harmondica. And most farmers, they are conventional methods that can be used to deal with this weed, but most farmers do not afford the conventional methods. However, there is a method that has been developed through research by the International Center of Insect Physiology and Ecology, ICP, whereby they found out that intercropping maize with this plant called Desmodium, it is able to control and eliminate the weed effectively. The technology is called push and pull. It has been in existence for a while. However, the adoption of this technology is low. This plant works in 2 ways. First, it stimulates the germination of the striga weed. And then secondly, it inhibits the growth of the weed. Therefore, that's why it is called the push and pull technology. It pulls it to germinate and then pulls it to die out. Next slide. The next technology in the next slide, Karen. Next slide. Yes, is use of agricultural lime. Kenya's soils suffer from soil acidity. This soil acidity is widespread and it limits the growth of crops in many parts of the world, especially in Kenya. The acidic soils occupy about 13% of Kenya's land area. And most of these soils are found in areas that are productive in the western part of Kenya. Soil acidity affects plants by increasing the presence of substances that are toxic, like aluminum, manganese, hydrogen ions, and it also works in reducing the availability of important plant nutrients like phosphorus, calcium, magnesium, and molybdenum. Use of agricultural lime, which is very cheap and available, makes the soil environment to be less acidic, and it also is it is friendly to the soil microorganisms that are important in the soil. It also is important in increasing the concentration of essential nutrients, and this technology is very available, is very cheap, and usually farmers tend to use more fertilizers when their crops are not doing well, not knowing that the problem is acidity. In the next slide, I would like to talk about the use of hermetic bags. Now, there is a pest called larger grain borer, LGB. It's a very troublesome pest. It's a very common pest. It affects stored maize grains and reduces the availability of the grains by up to 20%. And remember the fact that the striga weed reduces the crop in the yield of the crop in the field, and then in the store, losses up to 20% can be realized because of this this pest. Now, scientists through research have come up with a simple innovation that is cheap, effective, and available to the farmers. The bag consists of 2 layers, two layers of high density bags inserted into another bag of polypropylene. These bags, when used in storing of maize, is able to eliminate the use of insecticides, which are expensive to the farmer. And also the insecticides, when used, also cause environmental degradation. And so this is a very good innovation. Those 3 innovations are sustainable innovations. They are cost effective. They are not expensive. Now, in the 2 major obstacles slowing the uptake of the 3 technologies that I have talked about is a lack of awareness and the slow rate of adoption. I would like to look at, in the next slide, I would like to talk about the fact that the conventional extension methods of passing knowledge to the farmers in Kenya and indeed in the rest of Africa are expensive, they are top down, and they are not effective. This method, which has also been arrived at through research, is the use of social network extension approach. Social networks is a web of connections between individuals in the rural areas, especially in Kenya and in Africa. Most of the people in the rural areas have got connections. They have relations that they use to share information and ideas. These social networks act as channel for sharing information and learning. And I want to say that the speed with which agricultural innovations are adopted depends on identifying of entry points into the social network. The interval between introducing a new idea or technology and to the point at which it is adopted will depend mainly on smart targeting of the entry points so that they can be used to pass those sustainable innovations that have been developed and have been targeted at the farmers. I would like also to note that small-scale farmers rely on informal sources of information more than formal sources. We try to reach farmers using formal sources of information. Yet the farmers do well with informal sources of information. Social network analysis can be used or has been used to identify the relationship that exists in the communities in order to be able to identify the entry points and therefore target the farmers. The social network analysis method enables extension agents to identify entry points to the community in order to introduce sustainable innovations. Moderator, the president, that is my short presentation. I'm sorry I don't have diagrams and pictures like the other presenters, but if there are any questions, I'll be ready to answer those questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Thank you. Very good indeed. Muito obrigado. Muito bom. Nós vamos passar agora então, as perguntas feitas pelos nossos
Now we're going to have the questions and answers.
que estão nos acompanhando. E gostaria
Questions from the participants listening to us. And I'd also like to take this opportunity
tem aqui uma pergunta para o senhor.
as to say
Já.
we have a question already for
Então, vou fazer a pergunta já.
and taking advantage of the fact that Professor Kibet is here with us. We'd like to listen to the questions that have been submitted. So for Professor Kibet,
Como é pensada a estratégia para garantir a
how
permanência do jovem no
what is the strategy that you're thinking of to guarantee that young people will stay in the rural areas, and how can they be trained to become involved in the agri-food chain? And that is a question to Professor Kibet. Professor Kibet, this is a question for you, sir.
I'm sorry, President, could you repeat the question?
Yes.
I didn't have the translation
Kenya.
button on. Yes.
Ok. A pergunta é a seguinte.
The question, sir, is following. In Kenya, your country, what is the strategy that you are envisaging to ensure that young people will stay in the rural areas, and how will you train them to become involved in the agri-food chain in Kenya? That is the question.
Thank you very much, President. You will allow me to turn off my video because of the size, because of the network issues here. But I would like to say that's a very good question. We have a very large youthful population in Kenya and in Africa indeed. And the youth are put off by the manual nature of agriculture. And when they go to school, they come out and would like to be employed in formal sector. Employment is, there's very high unemployment. So one of the ways that we could use in Kenya to attract the youth is to ensure that agriculture is made attractive by making agriculture to be mechanized, and also make agriculture to be commercial in nature, rather than currently agriculture in Kenya is still traditional, and it doesn't attract the youth. So I think those two things, if that can be done, making it scientific, making it commercial, making it mechanized in order to be attractive. I hope I've answered the question.
Ok. Thank you. Nós temos uma pergunta agora para o
Thank you.
Dr. Manuel Otero.
Now, this is a question for Dr. Manuel Otero, which is the following. ICA has extensive experience in the tropics. So why, therefore, do you not share your experience with in the African savannas? So Dr. Manuel, you have the floor. Yes, that is quite correct. And thank you very much for the question. Indeed, the idea behind convening this international week of tropical agriculture is that we could institutionalize and transmit the message of ICA is that in sharing all this information, building networks, so we can channel information.
Porque es la hora de la agricultura y es la hora sobre todo de la agricultura tropical, que con la excepción de Brasil, yo diría que en el resto de nuestra América está más rezagada, sobre todo que los países de la agricultura temprada. Entonces, justamente el mensaje del ICA es ese, de abrirnos, de trabajar con la mayor humildad, conformando estos sistemas, no solo apoyar el fortalecimiento de los sistemas nacionales, sino también de los sistemas regionales, hemisféricos, porque ese debe ser el espíritu de los nuevos tiempos. Gracias.
Muito obrigado. Passamos agora ao Dr. Fadel, da Agra. Por favor, Dr. Fadel, poderia comentar mais sobre as perspectivas do Agra quanto à atenção que a África tem se preparado e aproveitado os investimentos estrangeiros no setor?
President, I heard the question in Portuguese. My Portuguese is completely non-existent.
Sorry about that.
So if somebody translated it in English or in French, I can try.
Okay. Can you say some words about the perspectives of the Agra in terms of what Africa can be prepared to make use of the investments from outside to agriculture?
Thank you very much, President. It's very clear. I mean, firstly, I have to say it's a great question because, as I mentioned in my presentation, Africa is very open for partnership. In fact, and just to echo what Mr. Manuel just said, we are making use of South-South triangular cooperation mechanism to make sure that we can take advantage of significant advances that Brazil and also most of the tropical countries have made in addressing common challenges. I also want to appreciate what our colleague from CIRAD also mentioned in terms of existence of those platforms. But to answer very quickly, I think Africa is ready for business. And the strategy, the approach is at the highest level, you have a policy commitment to open the country, to open the continent. I think the best example is the African Continental Free Trade Agreement that has been enacted this year, 2021, to make sure that we can boost the intra-regional trade within the continent. As we speak now, as you can imagine, because of the deficit we have in our production, most of the food consumed in Africa is imported, sometimes from Brazil, from Argentina, we think there is a better way of doing it, is creating a cooperation to produce this locally, building appropriate technology, create wealth, provide employment, so that it becomes a bit more beneficial. But the key driver has to do with policy predictability. I think all African countries are mindful of the fact that unless you have a proper policy environment that is predictable, that can help you to manage risk, both local investment and regional and international investment are going to be extremely difficult. So policy is one of them. Second, significant investment in infrastructure. I think you'll be surprised by how much, I mean, I'm sitting in Kenya with my brother, Professor Kibet. The rate of penetration of cellular phone in Kenya is amazing. So you have a significant appetite for technologies. And the question is to be able to leverage those technology to promote local and sustainable production process. I think we are willing to learn from the best practices across the world. We are particularly impressed by all the experience around the agropole. You know, many countries are setting up this ecosystem that enable business, not only from a finance, infrastructure, information, but also cooperation point of view. And across the continent, you have several innovation hubs that are really trying to attract the most creative investors so that those solutions can be deployed. So it's not a simple answer, it's a complex set of answers, but aimed at creating incentives, attracting investment, because the continent is probably where growth is going to happen. So the case for Africa is quite compelling. The perceived risk may be high, but this is where innovation is the way to go. And I think this is why we are exploring this engagement as an opportunity to promote that. My final comment, President, is I mentioned the AGRF. Every year we organize the African Green Revolution Forum. I invite all of you to attend. Last year, despite COVID, we have a very successful event in Kigali, in Rwanda. 10,000 participants connected online. And you have deal room, exchange of information, investment, etc. I think it's along the same line as the platform that Mr. Tanguy mentioned earlier. I think now there are significant opportunity for partnership. I thank you.
Thank you very much. We hope you succeed. Wow. Thank you.
Thank you. We will succeed together. Thank you, President.
Okay.
I challenge you to succeed with us.
All right. Thank you. Dr. Quintana, I have been asked to make the questions in Portuguese, but I don't know if there is a translation yet. Bom, pensando na barreira do baixo nível tecnológico que ainda existe entre os produtores familiares.
Talking about the technological differences between producers and their families, what can your organization do for this public, for this set of people?
¿Puedo responder? Respondo ya. Más o menos entendí cómo entiendo que la
Can I respond at this point? I understand that the question is how we can overcome this technological barrier with the small-scale producers or smallholders in Brazil and other parts of the region. Very good question, and thank you so much for your question. And that is fundamental. This is part of what I said before in my presentation. How can we come out of what I can say without any complexity, this sort of elitism? How can ensure and share that we share this research with group leaders? I think this is quite clear and very important. We have to ensure that all of the centers or the agencies that are here and many others that are participating, we have to ensure that this technology reaches them. I think that we are on the right path. We have to ensure we have to go from monitoring, from research and research in technology, how we can carry out research with laboratories and ensure that this goes to the society. If we do not involve the society, if we do not involve the small producers, as well as people in the urban areas, NGOs and indigenous groups, we will not succeed. We need their support. Without these groups, we cannot function. We have to ensure that those who have resources will continue with their researches. If we remain separate from these groups, it is going to be very difficult because they will not feel involved and they will not feel necessarily interested, and they will not try to boost and promote this from the rural areas. And there are many examples on how we can do this. We have complex examples, but we know that now we can make things far more easily accessible to smallholders, family smallholders, and small farmers, and who would like to have methods of conservation and sustainable agriculture. Many of the people who spoke before me mentioned the question of digitalization. That is easy with a low-level investment. It is possible to let this information available to them through cellular phones, through the internet, so that these smallholders, these small producers will receive technical aid and extension services that they need. We know, for example, several examples, the Ministry of Agriculture with other associations we are promoting digital extension services. We're promoting this in Colombia to give the information to the people who need this, the types of crops, how to fight against pests, how to fight against diseases, when to sow, when to plant, what are the climatic events and possibles and threats that they have. We can also share different types of information, such as a monitoring system, incidents, climate, or we can see how we can open our own centers and universities and repositories so that the society can become more involved. In conclusion, I'd like to say that not only is it possible, it is now easier to get now with the digital revolution. It is now easier to do this. We can have a financial input. We can have policies that will make information more available. But I'd like to insist on the fact that it is not only possible, we need a little bit more investment, need policies that will allow for this flow of information. It is very important to know that without sharing this, without this transparency and openness, we're not going to have the support that we need from the society and from the small farmers to ensure that they produce more and that their products go to the markets. So we have to know the sort of products that are being sold, and we cannot leave out a very important sector, which is the young people. They're very interested. They have great interest. We have to ensure that these young people who want to work on the land can become involved in Latin America, Africa, and other continents. However, we do not have a modern vision of innovation, this is not going to be possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we have a question to Dr. Lafarge. The question is about the Research International Network in agriculture. The question they ask is if this network is working on tropical wet areas in Amazon, and what is the perspectives on the potential and explore and promote the development in these areas in the region, specifically in tropical areas, wet, humid tropical areas. Do you understand it?
Thanks a lot for your question. So I am not an expert on Latin America. I never worked there. My colleagues are working there in the platforms, and particularly the platform what is called Amazonia, and there are different issues. One of the main issue is, of course, the degradation of forest, and to tackle this issue. It seems that people are also the livestock activities are improving also in the area, and so the colleagues are working on how to work together and integrate crop, livestock, and forest. and also agroforestry. So it's a whole system, and the very inclusive system. And of course, the option is to work as interdisciplinary team to look at this inclusive system to minimize gas emission, to maximize soil fertility, and to maximize sustainability of the systems. So it's really looking at integrated crop systems from crops, livestock, and forests. If some people are more interested, I can get them in contact with the colleagues of the platform so that they can talk a bit longer on these different issues. Thanks a lot for this very interesting question.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, there's other many questions, but you have to finish in time. So the last questions is to Dr. Kibet. Hello, Professor Kibet. There's one question more for you. Can you?
Yes.
Okay. It's about the use of MGOs in your country. These genetically modified organisms, plants. How is the effective control of seeds and pests, insect pests, for instance, in Kenya? Is it effective? How is the use of these MGOs plants against the pests and weeds?
Yes, thank you, President. Yeah? Yes, thank you, President. I suppose you're talking about the use of the plant, the Desmodium plant,
yes,
to control weeds. It is very effective. It's a very effective method of controlling weeds. It's biological, and it is friendly to the environment. It was developed with the participation of the farmers. So it's a participatory research, and it can do quite a lot in improving the productivity of maize in those areas that grow maize, especially in western part of Kenya. So I can say it's very effective. The only problem is that it has not been adopted. The adoption of these biological methods are very low. And so there is a need to think of more sustainable methods of improving the extension methods and improving adoption of such effective biological methods that don't affect the environment. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Well, finish 2 hours and half an hour of discussion. It was a very good indeed. Congratulations to Embrapa and the ICA. Dr. Manuel Otero, very good, was very good this today. And we know that all the week will be very good as well. And a lot of good comments on the internet about the discussions here. Congratulations, many people, and many other questions that we don't have time to go through. Thank you very much. Thank you to each one. Dr. Manuel, would like to say some words at the end?
Profesor Evaldo, no, simplemente felicitarlo por su
No, just to congratulate you on moderating this session so well, and to thank each of the members of this distinguished panel, and to express a commitment of ICA to continue working on the continuation and development of tropical agriculture, and just to wish you all a very good day.
Gracias.
Ciao,
Bye-bye.
ciao.